that clarity speaks to exactly what I want to talk about today. Just ignore the other blue box that's come up. Jane will turn that off in just a second. But when we talk about mistakes, we often talk about the classroom being a safe place to make mistakes. Do you talk about that? Yeah. Can you stop doing that? The reason I want to just raise that for you is that we often talk about, mistakes and, this is a safe place to make mistakes and, this is a safe learning environment. When we say it's safe to make mistakes and this is a safe learning environment, the inference is that we need to make it safe because it is inherently unsafe. And that's an issue that students, we wonder why they fear mistakes, why they don't want to go into their learning zone and things. It's because we've often set up the year saying, this classroom's a safe learning environment. And all the kids in the back of their head are going, what do you mean? It can be unsafe to learn? All right, well, I'll just wait and I'll be careful. And so all the work that we're doing, the stuff we've been doing on challenge, the stuff we're doing on mistakes now and the things moving forward, is shifting that language from safe places to growth places. And so our language becomes about growth, and that's a key for today. I'll just do what I said a second ago. I've got to re-plug something. Already happened. So yeah, that shift from safe places to growth places becomes a really important shift to make. Let's rock through this. The way we've talked about mistakes in the past, like we used to say, who remembers when mistakes were bad? Who went to school when mistakes were bad? Don't make mistakes, and big red cross and all the rest of it. Yeah. And we're told mistakes were terrible, don't do them. And the problem there was that restricted our growth. It stopped us going into our learning zone. It stopped us going to that place where we were uncertain. And so we sort of realized that, well, we shouldn't be doing that. And then we went the other way. Who's been told, mistakes are good? Mistakes help us learn. Mistakes, everyone makes mistakes. It's okay to make mistakes. When I started doing this work a number of years ago now, probably 10 years ago, there was a teacher I worked with in Adelaide who came into the workshop and he was so excited. He said, in our classroom, mistakes are really valuable. I have a banner across the top of my whiteboard that says, we make magnificent mistakes. And I just went, oh, I hope your kids aren't growing up to be pilots and surgeons, because that would be a problem. But I think what we talked about before, that we're quite insightful in the fact that not all mistakes are the same. And when we look at what social media tells us, we see things like this. Every mistake you make is progress. It's not. I mean, that's not true. Not every mistake you make is progress. Every mistake you correct is progress. But none of you have handed back a piece of student's work full of mistakes and gone, great progress. Like, it just doesn't work like that. And then social media will tell us things like this, that, failing, just another word for growing. No, it's not. Failing is a word to say, here is an opportunity to grow. It's not the growth. And so what we were touching on before was the recognition that, not all mistakes are the same. And that's what I want to talk about today, that our blanket approach to mistakes, to say mistakes are okay, mistakes help us learn, as if all mistakes were the same, has actually undermined our students' understanding of what they are. And as we'll see in a bit, we've been lying to them, because some mistakes are genuinely bad. As we pointed out a minute ago, some mistakes, call them careless mistakes, sloppy mistakes. What was the word you actually used? You didn't say careless, you said...
I said lazy.
Lazy mistakes, same sort of idea. They're not helpful. And in fact, one of the teachers I worked with last year, after having done this work with the kids, he was a grade 3 teacher. He rang me up on Zoom. As soon as it happened, he said, oh, James, I want to tell you about this. And we jumped on a Zoom meeting. And he said, I just had this interaction with one of the kids. And one of the grade 3 kids had made one of those lazy mistakes. I call them careless mistakes. And as he'd been walking by, the student had just gone, that's that's okay. Everyone makes mistakes. Mistakes are part of learning, and was just sort of dismissing his behaviour, like it didn't matter because it's okay to make mistakes. And the teacher just leaned in and said, "What type of mistake was that?" And the kid went, "Oh, that was one of those careless mistakes, wasn't it? Yeah, I shouldn't have made that one." And that little move showed a student just shifting a little bit, developing a deeper understanding of themselves as a learner. And so, what I want to talk about today is shifting this conversation from mistakes as generic and either good or bad to a conversation around mistakes being helpful or unhelpful. And the way we do that is by recognizing that not all mistakes are the same and actually shifting the focus from the mistake to the information it gives us and how we act on that. Most of what we've done in classrooms has been about, there's the mistake, fix the mistake. And all our concentration is on the work, on the mistake, on the thing that's gone wrong. And what our focus is going to turn to now is on, does that mistake give us information that's helpful or not? And what do we do in light of that mistake? Because we've got some students who just go, yeah, that's wrong. And they don't care that it's wrong. They just finish. There's no action. I'll give you a few more of these social media examples and you'll see what I mean. How we need to correct some of these messages that we've been talking about. That, every mistake you make is progress. No, it's not. Every mistake you correct, the action you take in the face of that mistake is the progress. Mistakes teach you important lessons. No, they don't. Mistakes don't teach you anything unless you respond to them effectively. The mistake doesn't teach you, your actions teach you. Failing is just a word for growing. Obviously, it's not, but it is a word to show here is an opportunity for growth. If you've fallen short, if you've failed, then there's an opportunity for you to move forward here. And this last one we'll get to at the end of the session. Every time you make a mistake, you're one step closer to your goal. That's not right. It's every time you learn from that mistake. And this particular one is often associated with Edison. I found 999 ways a light bulb doesn't work. And people often use that example as one of, it's making mistakes and learning from them. Edison wasn't just making mistakes. He didn't go, that one doesn't work, won't try that again. This one doesn't work, won't try that one again. He was thinking like a scientist. He was looking for what does work. So what he was doing is looking for the most information he could get. And so he would design an experiment that saved him from making 1,000 other mistakes. He'd test the width of the filament. He'd test the shape of the globe and these sorts of ideas. And so this whole conversation we're having about mistakes shifts from the mistake to the student's action based on the information the mistake gives them. Because the trite little slogans we sometimes hear like this, mistakes are proof you are trying. Well, that's lovely, but I'm not really interested in trying. I'm interested in growing. And so what I'm interested in is correcting mistakes is proof that you're growing. At the end of the day, mistakes aren't good or bad. They are signposts to tell us which direction to go. And that's been my story from the beginning, that challenges the pathway to growth. The habits of mind are the actions that take you down that path. Mistakes and feedback or advice is the information that keeps you going in the right direction. And effort drives that journey. So what we're going to look at is the nature of mistakes based on where they happen. We've got some mistakes, as we said before, the lazy mistakes that happen in your comfort zone, and they don't help. We've got other mistakes that happen in our aspirational zone that make us go, what the? I got no clue. They don't help. We've got some mistakes that are in our performance zone that are legitimately bad. Things have negative consequences that we want to avoid. Who's got kids that want to avoid mistakes all the time? Right? And so they should, some of the time, because some mistakes are genuinely bad. And then we're going to explore 3 different types of mistakes that all happen in our learning zone. So this work you've been doing on the zones of learning, we're immediately applying to help us think about the types of mistakes we're making. Let's talk about it. The first sort of mistake I want to talk about is the what I call a confusion mistake. I sometimes refer to it as an aspirational mistake. By the way, you get all these in documents and things. You can take notes if you need. But the confusion mistake happens up here in your aspirational zone. Remember, your learning zone feels like stretch. Your aspirational zone feels like strain. Who's ever made a mistake that's made them go, what the? I've got who, what, how? I don't get this. Like, what? Who's made a mistake like that? Where it's just no clue at all. Who's seen a student like that? If you're making mistakes that confuse you, that make you look at the work going, I don't get it. Like, why did that go wrong? It's a good sign you're in your aspirational zone. And that's where the zone calibration work that we talked about last time comes in. When we talk about these aspirational mistakes, you feel out of your depth. Like you feel like you're drowning. Not you can't quite, it's not that you can't quite work it out, it's you've got no clue at all. You need to calibrate. Is this the right zone? Right? The correct response is not to go, I'll try and work this out. I haven't got a clue how I'll do that, but I'll just stick with it a bit longer and see if I can work. That's not the right response. A mistake that gives you no information other than that didn't work is of no help at all. Who's had a situation where a student's been going, why did that go wrong? I don't get it at all. And you've come in and gone, oh, that happened because this, this, and this. And you could see exactly why the student made the mistake. You've all done that, yeah? I hope you've all done that at some point. The reason you could so easily see the reason for the mistake is the information was available to you. The information that was in that mistake was in your comfort zone. It was in their aspirational zone. So the nudge to remember here is to stretch, not strain. That if you're making those sort of mistakes, don't persist, don't keep going, come back and find your learning zone. And sometimes, just stop and seek help. Make sure you're doing that properly. The last one I put down here, sometimes when kids make those sort of mistakes, it's because they're actually doing the wrong task. Who can relate to that feeling where you've had kids that are going, I don't get it. And you've just gone, yeah, because you're not meant to be doing that. You're meant to be doing this. And they've gone, oh, okay, I can do that. Yeah. So sometimes that's the right response in the face of these sort of aspirational mistakes. What's that next bit? The next sort of mistake is what you called before a lazy mistake. I call it a careless mistake. Sometimes I call it a sloppy mistake. But it's that sort of mistake that makes you go, oh, that was dumb. Like it happens in your comfort zone. It's normally something that you've done correctly 1,000 times, and this time you just didn't do it. You know, the kid who called you mum, like she knows you're not mum, but she just made that mistake. Like, it's that sort of thing. Did that happen today? But yeah, it's like we were saying before, that the kid who forgets to put a capital at the start of a sentence, they know how to do it. They know they're meant to do it. They just didn't do it because they weren't concentrating. And the issue with this and the sort of message we need to communicate to the kids is that mistake's not helpful. Like you can't get away with, oh, mistakes are part of learning. Everyone makes mistakes. When it's a careless, lazy type mistake, because it's not a mistake that helped you learn. It didn't give you any new information. You already knew what you're meant to do. When you hear these or when you make these sort of mistakes, you feel foolish, embarrassed. Like, anyone want to own up to one recently?
Yeah.
Go on.
I was on a long drive. It was a couple-hour drive, and I've driven it lots and lots of times before, and I wasn't paying attention, and I missed my turn, and I added an extra half an hour to my trip.
Took you 15 minutes before you realised you missed your turn.
Probably took more than that. I was singing and I was driving, going, "This looks different." I'm not meant to be.
And we've all done that. And did you go, oh, I'll have to keep that in mind for next time? Of course not. You went, oh, geez, I knew not to do that. And that's what you hear. You hear people say, oh, that was dumb. I shouldn't have done that. Oh, and this was exactly the mistake the kid I was talking about before made, that he didn't learn anything from it. But once he was told that this wasn't an okay sort of mistake, it made him become a slightly more discerning learner. And that's what you're helping kids to do here. You're helping them become more discerning as a learner. When you find yourself doing those, Alyssa, what did you do to help prevent that next time?
Pay attention to the map and turn the music down a bit.
Yeah. Work out what the distractions were, check the rubrics, understand what quality looks like, look for patterns sometimes. Yeah, I always miss my turn off when I'm on the phone, or I always miss my turn off when I'm, whatever it might be, and go, that's what I need to do. For the kids, it might be, I always make stupid mistakes when I'm sitting next to James. He distracts me. I won't do that anymore. Those sort of things. But as I said, I'll just click out of that. The aspirational mistakes, the information is not available to you because it's too far beyond your current understanding, so it's not helpful. These mistakes, these careless mistakes, sloppy mistakes, lazy mistakes, the information is available to you, but it's not new. It doesn't add anything. Now, this mistake I want to spend a little bit of time on. The next sort of mistake is the mistake that happens in our performance zone, and we call it a performance mistake. This is the mistake that genuinely has negative consequences. If you'd gone through that, instead of missing your turn off, you hadn't been looking at the lights and went straight through the red light, like that would have been a serious mistake. It wasn't a careless mistake, it had negative consequences. And so when mistakes happen in your performance zone, they're genuinely bad. And so when we said in the past mistakes are bad, they're right. I used to tell stories about the Challenger disaster. Some of you won't remember the Challenger disaster, but the USA, the space shuttle flights, one of them blew up. Now, it was just a simple mistake. A gasket didn't work. But it had profound consequences because it had to perform. So when you're in your performance zone, it's important to get it right. And performance mistakes, when you make them, you get that sinking feeling. Like we all know it. We go, oh no, did I do that? That's going to be a bugger. Like, that sort of thing. There's real consequences. One of the things about these mistakes is some of our students think all mistakes are performance mistakes. Those kids that never want to make mistakes, those kids that always put up their hand with the answer but never the question, those kids that love spending their time in the performance zone where it is right to minimise mistakes. They think every mistake is like this. And when we come along and say, no, it's all right, mistakes are learning, the classroom's a safe place to make mistakes, they go, safe? What could go wrong? I've seen people get bad things happen when they make mistakes. I'm not going to make any mistakes. And so they withdraw into the safety of not wanting to make mistakes because they think something bad can happen. Our job is to help them calibrate that, to distinguish between what's a learning situation and what's a performance situation, to sometimes recognise those critical moments as we move into our learning zone when we need to be in our performance zone. Let me give you a couple of examples about what I mean here. Some of the things you can do. Who's got a couple of those kids in their classroom that always want to get things right? Never want to make a mistake. Has it worked to say it's okay, mistakes help us learn? No, it doesn't, because they know you're full of it. They know you're lying, because some mistakes are legitimately bad. They know that. And so when we talk about performance mistakes with these kids, the first thing you've got to do is validate their fear. You've got to say, you're right. Sometimes mistakes are bad. Bad things can happen when you get things wrong. That's why we practice to get them right. You need to help them calibrate between those performance situations and those learning situations. So the message they need to hear over and over again is, today we are going into our learning zone, and our learning zone is a place where mistakes are expected. Mistakes we use, and we'll talk about the types of mistakes we use there. And tomorrow we're going into our performance zone where we want to minimize mistakes because it's going on your test. And so we need to help them distinguish between when it's okay to make mistakes and when it's not. And if you want to play with their head, when they're trying to get it right all the time, you can say, that idea you've got, that feeling you have to want to get it right all the time, that's a great feeling. It's really important to want to get things right. But the thing you're getting wrong is you're getting things right at the wrong time. You're trying to get things right when you're in your learning zone. And your learning zone is not for getting things right. Your learning zone is for figuring things out. Your performance zone is for getting things right. And so you're getting it wrong by getting it right. Watch the little head go. You're not telling them to take more risks. You're helping them to categorize reality more accurately. So in that calibration, it's not a case of, take some risks with your learning, stretch yourself out, so know when to get things wrong and know when to get things right. For those kids, because it's not going to change their attitude tomorrow, one of the things you can do is give them other people's mistakes. They've got no problem with other people. It's just their mistakes that they've got problems with. So if you want kids to feel more familiar with getting things wrong and what do you have to do when you're faced with an error and working through it and all the rest of it, rather than saying, here's some work, do it, when you make mistakes, we'll work through it. Instead, what you want to do, instead what you want to do is to say, here is someone's work from last year or a worksheet that I put together. There are 10 mistakes in it. Work through it, see if you can find the 10 mistakes and correct them. Those kids who don't like making mistakes don't like making their mistakes. They're fine with other people's. And we need to change the feelings involved. That's at the moment, those kids feel like when they make a mistake, they've failed. And that message we talked about last week about understanding your learning zone, that when you're in your learning zone, mistakes mean I'm in the right place. As I'm figuring it out, these mistakes are giving me information that I need. As I said, up there, you don't reduce fear by encouraging risk. Take some risk with your learning. It's okay. Try something and see what happens. Because in their head, they're going, if I try something and something bad might happen, I don't want that to happen. You reduce fear by improving their judgment. Now's the time when I should avoid mistakes, but now's the time when I shouldn't be avoiding mistakes. It's that sort of message that we're trying to get. What about tests? What about tests? What about when you're doing tests? What's the issue here? Should kids be okay with making mistakes in tests? Should they be trying to minimize mistakes in getting it exactly right? What do you reckon?
Should be avoiding the careless mistakes, the tests.
Always. It's funny, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because you're all stuck now. You're actually in your learning zone. You're not quite sure. And most of you are avoiding venturing a thought because you don't want to get it wrong.
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting?
thought I'd said too much already. That's all.
Say it again. I couldn't hear.
I feel like it depends on the test though. Like if it's one that's covering like, I guess like topics that have been explored like for a while, like I think, and it depends on kids' approaches to tests as well and their perceived ideas of like how they should approach a test. Like some are fine with it, whereas some absolutely freak out, even though they know the content. Their mindset shifts because they hear the word test or assessment and they immediately then switch their brain.
What's their fear? Go beyond what you see. What are they fearing? What's the reason for it?
Oh, I've got kids that like genuinely, and I don't know the actual truth behind it, but some of them are like, well, what if I get a bad grade and my parent is mad at me?
Yeah. So there's fear behind it. What they're fearing a consequence of that grade. They're fearing going through the red light and smashing into another car. They're recognizing that some mistakes do have negative consequences to the point where, and I don't know the kid you're talking about, obviously, but some kids will go, I would rather not take this test and get something wrong than try at all. Like I'd rather get 0 than try and fall short. We avoid it altogether. And the issue there for them is that, again, they're thinking that that test is a performance situation that has negative consequences attached to it. And the real point here that I'm trying to make in a very roundabout way is to recognize that tests aren't necessarily performance situations. Right? They're not, sorry, I should say that again. They're not necessarily in your performance zone. In an ideal world, you would set the bar here. This is the work we're doing. The kids would go, that's really hard. I don't know how to do that. You'd go, great. That's all what your learning zone's about. They'd try, they'd make mistakes, they'd improve, they'd grow. Eventually they'd master it and they go, I've got this now. If I concentrate, I can do it. And you'd give them the test. And the kids get 100% because they've all grown to exactly the point where you've asked them to be. Or some of them might have even got to here and go, the test is easy. Just because you're giving kids a test doesn't mean it's their performance zone. The performance zone is a measure between their current abilities and the abilities required for the test. So some of it might be easy. If you give me a grade 3 test, I'm pretty confident I'd do all right, I think. Should I? Can I do a grade 3 test and be fairly confident? But that's the point. The thing for these kids is, because you're going to have a conversation now about formative assessment, because you would like to say to kids, no, look, this test just tells me where you're up to. We'll work through the mistakes and we'll correct them. Wouldn't you? You would like to tell kids that sort of message. The test just tells us where we're up to, and we'll keep moving from there and we'll show you how to do it. And we'll give you the test again until you get 100% for it. That's sort of like, well, maybe not next week, but by the time you're in grade 4, the grade 3 test you should get 100% for, that sort of idea. The problem here is that we are attaching what we call formative assessment to negative consequences. And when the tests can carry negative consequences, those consequences are real. There's a slap on the back of the hand for getting something wrong. There's you don't get into this school because your grades are this standard and so forth. The idea here is this, that, hang on, I just went through all that. We don't need all those, so I'll go through the dot points. The zone is about the learner's relationship with the task, not the task itself. If formative assessment has consequences, then what we're teaching kids is that it's not formative, it's summative. Formative tests shouldn't have consequences. They should be formative to tell us what we need to do next. But if that grade goes in your grade book, if that mark goes on that kid's paper, if that paper has to go home to mum and dad and say, this is what I got, and it never has the opportunity to change, then that grade is being attached to the kid. And that's where the issue comes in. That if the grade, let me just move something here. Over here, James, there we go. The core problem in schools is that we often turn mistakes into performance mistakes. We tell them that we're learning from our mistakes and so forth, but we turn them into performance mistakes by attaching consequences to them. And so the students begin to believe that mistakes equal judgment, not information. That correct answers equal ability, incorrect answers equal low ability, and assessment defines identity. And the key message you need to give your kids, and I'll leave this slide up for a minute, because I want you to think about when you're assessing kids, or giving assessment, I should say, what are you assessing? Because what you need to be assessing is where they are, not who they are. But how many of your kids think that assessment judges them, not where they're up to? And so, I'll skip past that 1 second. You're going to set another set of goals between now and the next session. And one of them might be about, because it's a powerful one to be working with, is what meaning are you attaching to assessment? Do students in your class think the assessment is about them? I got a D, I'm not very smart. Or do they think it's about where they're up to? I got a D, so I've got a lot more learning to do. Very different.
Nearly all would say that it's about them as a person.
Now, you can change that. The image that we talked about last time, the ladder for the zones. When I talk about Glenview Primary School, the way those kids saw that ladder was just where they're up to at that point in time. They all saw themselves improving. When I showed you that rubric before, the grade 3 rubric, the grade 4 rubric, the grade 5 rubric, they saw it as a progression they were moving through and where they're up to at the time. You'll remember my story about Rowan. That was I'm below standard. I'm still below standard. I'm still below, like he was improving, but didn't experience that growth. And so when our classrooms become about being growth places, it becomes a matter of where am I up to, not who am I, what am I good at. How are we going for time? Good. Still got 20 minutes, yeah? Yeah, that's good. All right. Those 3 mistakes, because I want you to sort of capture this idea. Those 3 mistakes, the careless mistakes, the sloppy mistakes, you called them, I can't remember. Oh, sorry, say it again. Those mistakes. Lazy. Sorry, I'm too lazy to listen to you properly. The issue for me is that my microphone is right here, so you can hear me really clearly. Your microphone is way, way, way over here. So, anyway, those lazy mistakes don't give you new information, so they're not helpful. Those aspirational mistakes don't give you information that you can access. You can't understand it, so they're not helpful. And the performance mistakes, it's true, you can learn from them, but they come attached to negative consequences. So again, not something you want in your classroom. And so when you start differentiating these mistakes, these unhelpful mistakes from the helpful mistakes, when you change your narrative in the classroom from mistakes are good or possibly bad, depending on how I'm feeling on the day, to the helpful to not helpful, things start to change. The next sort of mistake I want to talk about is this idea of a stretch mistake. Now, a stretch mistake is the sort of mistake that we meant when we said to kids, mistakes help us learn. It's okay to make mistakes, those sort of things. Give it a go. If you make a mistake, it'll tell us what we need to learn, all those sort of ideas. And stretch mistakes happen, unsurprisingly, in our learning zone. So when we're doing what we did in the last session, and you're walking past the kid and you're seeing, oh, he's making mistakes, he's in his learning zone, he's struggling, and your heart is just going, I need to rescue this kid, you're now going to turn around and go, I can see you're making lots of mistakes, with a smile on your face. That tells me you're in your learning zone. I can see how you're working that out. You're almost there. That's awesome. That's where you grow. I'm going to come back in 5 minutes, and if you still need some more help, I'll help you then. That's the moment where you can say those mistakes are valuable. I can see they're just on the edge of your ability. You're working through it. It's telling you something. One of the handouts that I'll post in the community later on gives you a whole lot of language around this about, what's that mistake trying to tell you? That's a really useful one just to put in your back pocket. I can see you haven't got that yet. What's that mistake trying to tell you? Because when you talk about challenge as a friend, challenges come to help you grow. Challenge is giving you that mistake. What's the mistake trying to tell you? It turns the whole narrative in the classroom into something that's about growth, not, oh, you haven't got that right yet, have you? Judgment. So stretch mistakes, these are the mistakes that make you go, give me a minute, because I think I can work that out. Like, it's like seeing through the fog. You've all made them. It just gives you that feeling of, I think I'll get there. It lets you say sort of that, how do I fix that? You get that sense of it should have been like this, but it was actually like that. Why? What happened? You have to interrogate these sort of mistakes. I often talk about these sort of mistakes as being like autopsies. All right, the question's dead. It's wrong. Like, it didn't go the way it was meant to go. Now I've got to figure out why. So it's like it's reactive. It's happened after the mistake, and it allows you to sort of pull it apart and go, well, what happens if we did it this way and this way and this way? Oh, now it's come back to life. And that story, when you make it about stories, when you make it about the play of trying to figure it out, rather than, you got that wrong, let's see if we can fix it, it gives kids that relationship again, that this is a place they can play. This is a place they want to be. Challenge is their friend. The mistakes are things to muck around with, not to be judged by. Compared to exemplars, one of the strategies that I always taught kids in my Year 7 maths classroom was, Bob, check the back of the book. Check the answers. Where are you? You're meant to be here. You're meant to be there. All those backtracking, those sort of things. Request feedback, or I should write there now, request advice. But what you're doing is you're interrogating that mistake for possible information. So that idea of engaging your problem-solving superpowers that we'll talk about down the track, the habits of mind. How do you extract the information there? Sorry, was there a question came up then? No, it was just an echo on the line. Okay. Now I can see what it was. It was me freezing again. So I just got to do that, and I'll be back with you. All right. Next sort of mistake. The next sort of mistake, now you guys will be familiar with this because you do it deliberately sometimes in your classroom, is what I call a aha moment mistake. It's a mistake that, unlike the stretch mistake where you've got to conduct an autopsy to find the information, this sort of mistake surprises you. You go, oh, I didn't know that. Like, it happens again in your learning zone. But instead of happening reactively, it happens fortuitously. Who's been clicking around in a piece of software, for example, and is going, well, what happens if you do this? But, oh, I didn't know I could do that. Who's had those sort of moments where suddenly information's, but that's what we're talking about. And sometimes in primary schools in particular, we rig it for kids to suddenly discover things. If you're doing play-based learning, exploratory learning like that, you'll tell the kids, go play with that basket that's got batteries and wires and globes in it and just, see what happens. And the kids will play for a while and nothing will happen. And then one kid will go battery, wire, globe, wire. It goes on. And they've discovered the information rather than having to interrogate for the information. And that's what this mistake is all about, the aha moment. The aha moment gives you that moment where you go, oh, wow. And it surprises you. Can anyone think of a time when that's happened to them? Now, you can think of times it's happened. Can you remember it, though? Like the specific example. And that's the problem. The problem with aha moments is that you do go, wow, that's a really interesting piece of information. That'll be really useful. I should remember that. And you don't. because it's often information you weren't looking for. Unlike the interrogation that goes on with the stretch mistake, I'm looking for what makes this work. An aha moment is a moment where you go, oh, that's just interesting. I didn't know that. A lot of discoveries made this way. If you're talking to the kids about these mistakes, you might talk to them about people like Alexander Fleming, discovered penicillin. That was an aha moment where he'd left his agar dishes, nutrient dishes, on the windowsill over the weekend. He was growing bacteria. And he came back and some of his nutrient dishes had mold growing on them. He didn't want the mold. That was a mistake. He could have just thrown it out. But he took a moment and went, that mold has killed the bacteria. We've always wanted a way to kill bacteria. That's awesome. I wonder if we can make use of that. And that's where penicillin came from, and a whole string of antibiotics based on molds. The trick with these ones is to recognise that you've got to capture the information. If you don't capture it, you'll forget it because it's not something you were looking for. Backtrack, do it again, repeat it, do those sorts of things. But yeah, the key here is to recognise that unlike the reactive, the mistake's dead, find out what happened, stretch mistake, this is suddenly I've got information. This is useful. But it's only useful if you remember it, put it in your back pocket. The last sort of mistake I want to talk about is the most powerful sort of mistake. And it's what we call a design mistake. And a design mistake, unlike a stretch mistake where you sort of try and fail and go, why did that happen? This mistake you make on purpose. This is a mistake where you go, I am going to break something to find out why it breaks. Now, it may not be physically breaking it, but you're designing the environment to give the information you want. Now, again, it happens in your learning zone, but this time it's proactive, right? So three types of mistakes in the learning zone. The stretch mistake, which is reactive, like you made the mistake, why did that happen? The aha moment that's fortuitous, it just presented itself to you. And this mistake where you're really, really deliberate about it. And that's what we were talking about before with the Edison example. When Edison was making mistakes, light globes that didn't work, he wasn't just going, well, 1 doesn't work, 2 doesn't work, 3 doesn't work. I'll just keep going until I find one that does. It wasn't random. It was, I'm going to test 5 different filament sizes to point the direction to the most important, the right filament size or the right shape, whatever it might have been. When we make design mistakes, instead of feeling like, oh, why did that happen? Or, oh, wow, look what happened. It feels like, how do I make that happen? You think like a scientist. You have a hypothesis. You have an idea about what's going to give you the information that will be that you're going to need, that you're looking for. You're asking what will happen if, or more likely, I think this will happen if. So you design a hypothesis, test it, and so forth. You have to identify the way of finding the information, and here we are back to the actions that we're taking. And you make predictions and test them. Now, my experience is that most of you are currently going, I don't get it. What's that sort of mistake like? Like, who's immediately got an idea of what a design mistake looks like? Yeah, most of us don't, but you do. Sorry, say it again.
I said cooking.
Tell me about that. How did you do it in cooking? Because when I cook, my mistakes are stretch mistakes. My mistakes are like, why did that go wrong? How can I fix it? What are you doing?
Chucking it all in a pot and hoping for the best.
See, no, you're not designing, you're hoping.
Yeah.
Designing would be, last time I put in, a teaspoon of sugar. This time I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of sugar to see if that makes it better or worse. So you're deliberately trying to look for where the line is. If you're just chucking stuff in and hoping for the best, Yeah. That's called food poisoning generally. I'll tell you where you have design mistakes though, and you've seen little kids design mistakes as well. Who's seen, whoops, I haven't got them up here. Who's seen these games?
Yep.
Now, who's seen a little kid play Guess Who? How do they play?
They cheat.
Well, that's another way to look for the information. See, if I saw a kid cheating like that, in light of what we've just been talking about, I would say, you're looking for the information. That's really good. But you're looking for it in a way that's breaking the rules. The rules of this game says you've got to search for the information. How can you do that? So you're talking about what you're trying to achieve. Little kids I often find when they play Guess Who, play it by saying, is it Miss Smith? Is it James? Is it Michael? Like, ding, ding, ding. Now, when they twig in to how the game works, what do they start asking?
Do they have a
Where we go.
Yeah. Do they have a hat on?
Do they have a hat?
Do they
Now,
ask
if they ask, do they have a hat? They can't get it right. They can't, like before, when they're saying, is it this person? Is it this person? They're hoping to get it right. When they ask, are they wearing a hat? They're saying, I want to get as much information about this person as I can. So half of them wrong. Is it a boy? No. Is it this? And they're searching for information. How many of you recognise this game?
Mastermind.
Mastermind.
I love
Yes.
Mastermind.
Cool. I love it when people recognise Mastermind because it's an old game. Like it was probably in the 50s and 60s where it first came out, and it keeps rolling through. But same idea. You don't just guess and go, is this right, is this right, is this right? You've got to guess the colour and position of all those 4 pegs. So you've got to come up with strategy. Test, test, test. How do I get the most information? What's this guess going to tell me? And what each of those is doing is teaching you how to shift from, I've got to find out what went wrong, to, oh, that was lucky, to how do I work this out? And so again, we're coming back from that shift from away from the mistake to the information and the action students take to either get that information or in light of that information. With the stretch mistakes, forgotten what I'm doing here. The 3 shifts we're trying to make today is, and then I'm going to come back to one more example of a design mistake. We're trying to shift our understanding or the communication that we attach to mistakes from judgment to information. Where we want students to come away. So if you're thinking about the next little change in your practice you're going to do, the commitment you're going to make, something around shifting the idea of mistakes from judgment to information would be important. We want to move from a mistakes focus, look what we've got wrong, to a response, to an action focus. What are you doing to get it right? What information are you looking for? How will you know? Those sorts of questions. So rather than saying, what have you got wrong? What's that mistake telling you? Have you asked that mistake for information today? What have you done to find the information in that mistake? Those sort of words. And the third one is shifting from risk language to growth language. So if you're the person that says, okay to take risks, it's like, no, it's not. We don't want our students to be risk takers. We'll talk about that when we talk about habits of mind. One of the habits of mind is taking responsible risks. And I want to actually suggest that we should stop that and talk about seizing opportunities. And the difference between a responsible risk and a risk and an opportunity is information. If you're going down to the casino and going, I'll put it all on red, that's a risk. If you're going to the blackjack table and you've counted all the cards and you know the next 3 cards, 2 of them are going to suit you, that's an opportunity. It's cheating, but it's an opportunity. I'm not advocating gambling, by the way, just to be clear about this. Now, I wanted to ask as well, what's coming up there? Oh, that's right. 5 minutes, just on time. Any of you do Wordles?
Yeah.
Who plays Wordle? Yeah, you've all played it at some time. Got a favourite word to start with?
Audio.
Yeah, or audio or a Jew.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're doing audio and a Jew because it's got lots of vowels. Yeah.
Yeah.
Not going to give you the information you want. You don't necessarily want vowels. What you want is you want the most common letters. Right? You want to know which letters are most likely to be in there. And some vowels aren't very common. There's not a lot of U's, for example, in words. So the word that is in that if you look at all 5-letter words and look at the frequency of letters within those words, the 5 most common letters, so the letters that you're likely to find and give you the most information, you want to write this down if you're a Wordle player, is A-R-I-S-E, arise. That's your first word. That's most likely to give you information that you need. Now, say you put a rise in. Now I can see writing them down. If you put a rise in and you get 2 letters, right? You've found out it's got an A and an I in it or something. Do you put those next 2 letters in the second guess?
Oh, that I do. I like to get in as few as possible.
Anybody else? See what you're doing. If you take the 2 letters you know are there and you put them into the next word, look, there's a shot you might get it right. But you now only are making available to you 3 more pieces of information when you could have had 5. Because the next 5 most common letters in Wordle, C-L-O-U-T. So if you write arise and then clout, you'll almost never get it in 2 guesses, but you'll get the 10 most common letters. And you want to know the next 5 letters?
Yeah, I'm playing it right now.
The next 5 most common letters. So now you'll have 15 out of 26 letters that are the most common letters that is likely to give you 3 or even 4 letters that you can start guessing the word now. The last word is nymph, N-Y-M-P-H. If you go arise, clout, nymph, you'll almost always end up with 3 or 4 letters that you can now start guessing. You'll almost never get it in the first 3 guesses, but you'll start getting the information you need. And that's the sort of thing where you do when you design mistakes. So key ideas here. I think this might even be a repeat. This was my, yeah, that's not meant to be there. That slide's out of order, which I put there. I put a slide out of order to show you what a performance mistakes look like. Don't lie about your mistakes. When you make mistakes like that, and I did legitimately make that mistake, that slide should have been earlier up, out of sequence. Validate to the kids, you're right, I shouldn't have done that. There are times when it's important to get things right. And, when you're being paid for a job, when something's being tested, when these standards are being expected of you, that's a time when you shouldn't make mistakes. I should have, and go back and talk about what you should have done. Don't joke about I made a spelling mistake. Go, oh, that was a careless mistake. What have I told you kids about making careless mistakes? Those lazy mistakes. You've got to concentrate. Now, I wasn't concentrating today. Be honest about the mistakes. Don't just flop them off like we sometimes do with the kids. So, we've gone through 6 different types of mistakes. The 3 that are unhelpful, aspirational because it doesn't give you any useful information, any accessible information. Those lazy, careless, sloppy mistakes that give you information you already had. And the performance mistakes that, importantly, you didn't want to make because things can go wrong. They can have negative consequences. And the 3 that were valuable mistakes. The 3 that were the stretch mistakes where you made it and you had to interrogate it. The aha moment where you went, oh, wow, and then normally promptly forget. So you've got to do something to remember it. And the most important one, the design mistake, where you're searching for the information. You're creating an environment that gives you what you want. The important messages there were to move from the mistake to the information, from the mistake to the actions students take, and to shift from that idea of risk to the idea of growth. I'm going to post in the community tomorrow for you your next commitment. And your next commitment, I'll put some other resources up there, some more nudges and bits and pieces. Excuse me. But you'll take one of those ideas and you go, how can I start playing with it? If you've got a bunch of kids, and remember, the idea here is not to do everything all the time. You might decide to focus on that one kid that you know will never want to make a mistake, that's always thinking every mistake is a performance mistake. And you might just go, I might work with her. I'm going to be thinking about how I communicate mistakes just with her for a while. See if I can make that work. Or whatever it's going to be for you. One of the pushbacks I often get from primary teachers is, do we have to introduce all 6 different types of mistakes? No, of course not. If you just introduce the difference between stretch mistakes and careless mistakes, make that explicit in your classroom, that these, now, if they're going to put a capital at the start of the sentence, that's not a good mistake, not a helpful mistake. But that mistake where you went into your learning zone and you couldn't work it out and you had to try it again and see what happened, that was a good mistake. That was a helpful mistake. Even I fall back into that good, bad type thing. So, with that said, I think you guys are probably busting to go home, yeah? Who's had a long day?
Yep.
Only one of you. So, all right, the rest of you can stay. Did that land something for you today?
Yeah.
Yeah, good. Go away and think about it. Stay in the community. Come back. Post your questions. I love seeing that work come through. I will respond to it. I will add suggestions. I will give you more resources, do all that sort of stuff. You guys have been one of the best at jumping into the community, so you are officially my favourite. And not that that works, but look at how you all smiled. That's great. But yeah, the more you engage in there, the more I want to help you. So if you want support, I'll be there for you. Cool.
Thank you.
Thanks, folks. I'll see you again soon.